Okay, for this video, I wanted to cover the IRS Form 56, which is titled Notice Concerning Fiduciary Relationship. So this form can be filed in a number of different circumstances, but in this video, I wanted to cover, frankly, what's one of the more common ones, where you have an individual that is now deceased, and let's say either their sibling or their children, or another individual is responsible for serving as the executor of their estate, and they're, again, ultimately responsible for filing final tax returns, the final 1040, or also a Form 1041 if there is a trust that is left over. So in this fact pattern, what we have here is we have John Q. Taxpayer. He is the deceased individual. And then the individual that is the fiduciary for his estate is going to be Jane D. Smith, which is his daughter. Okay, so we'll just go through the form here. What are some of the key elements and sections you need to complete? And given this fact pattern, what pieces can you perhaps leave blank? So top of the form here, John Q. Taxpayer. This is the person for whom you're acting as the representative. So in this case, John is the one that's deceased, so we're filing this on his behalf for Jane. If the individual listed on line 1 here is deceased, because you're filing it for those reasons, you would have the decedent's social security number here. So this is John's SSN. If you're filing this for someone that's not deceased, so if it's an individual that's of diminished capacity, or they're not able to manage their own affairs, you would have their name listed here as well, but you would list their tax ID number here in just the standard ID number field. Also, if you have a bankruptcy estate, then you would have the entity here, and then the bankruptcy tax ID, or the bankruptcy estate's tax ID listed here as well. So decedent's SSN goes here if you're filing this on behalf of a deceased person. For all other occurrences where you would need to file this, you're just listing their SSN, ITIN, or EIN here in the ID number field. Address for the person there, right? What was their last known address? And then here you have the fiduciary's name and information. So fiduciary name, address, and then their contact phone number. Now in Section A, we need to be precise about how is this individual as the fiduciary appointed to manage the affairs of this individual listed on line 1 or entity, right? In this case, we have a court appointment of testate estate, which means that John did have a valid will. So in his will, he appointed Jane to be the executor or administrator of his estate. And so we have a will, we're going to probate, and the court agreed with the appointment. So they did appoint Jane as the executor of the estate. And then as it says here in box 2A, if we checked 1A, 1B, or 1D, enter the date of death. So John did pass away on August 1st, 2021. So we enter that field here. And again, here in box 1C, 1E, 1F, or 1G, if that was the case, then we would complete this, but that's not the case here, so we can leave 2B blank. Now, nature of liability and tax notices, what we're doing here is we are filing, we are getting an appointment for income tax. The estate tax is applicable if you have a deceased individual, if you have a taxable estate. Again, taxable estates, that's a Form 706 filing. Those only apply if you have an individual that has a lot of wealth, right? So if they have a taxable estate based on their net wealth, you would have an estate tax filing as well. But in this case, John is below those exemptions, so we're just filing for income tax purposes. And so federal tax form number, check all that apply. Again, so the 706 series forms, 70 are for estate tax, 709 is for gift tax. Those are not going to apply here. We just have Form 1040 filing obligations. And you could potentially have 1041 filing obligations if you had, let's say, a revocable trust that became irrevocable. But in this case, it's a very straightforward estate. We have a small estate. We're just filing for income tax purposes, and we have to file a 1040. Okay? In Part 2, revocation or termination, this would apply if you are actually revoking a prior fiduciary relationship. Again, this is an initial filing, so Part 2 is not relevant for us. And in Part 3, court and administrative proceedings, again, we have a will here, so we have to go to court to get the estate probated. And so we enter the information about the name of the court that initiated these proceedings, right? So just the name of the court, local court address, the date the proceeding was initiated, the docket number, just provide as much information as you can. And ultimately, Part 4 is going to be signed by the fiduciary. Right, so the fiduciary in this case is Jane. So Jane's responsible for completing all this information, or if she wants to hire a CPA or a lawyer to prepare all this for her, she can. But ultimately, she has to be the one signing as a fiduciary. And again, it's a standard penalty of perjury statement. So she wants to make sure that all the information here is true, accurate, and complete. And then she enters her title. In this case, she's the executor of the estate, dates it, prints it out, and then mails it to the IRS. And so that's going to be important, because what this will allow her to do is she can sign John's final Form 1040 tax return on his behalf as a fiduciary. She also has the authority then to collect any kind of tax refunds, make any tax payments. And if she does need to contact the IRS for any information, either to retrieve it or provide the IRS any information, this authorization will allow her to do so. So in addition to filing this form, you are supposed to attach the court appointment or a copy of the will. So in this case, she would, whatever the court appointment proceeding provided that authorized her to be a fiduciary, she would attach a copy of that document to the Form 56, and send that into the IRS, and that should suffice. And then the IRS will process her fiduciary authority. So that covers it for this form. Fairly straightforward. Not a lot of information on here, but very, very important that this is done if you're going to be the executor or administrator of an estate, because that's going to give you full access and authority to the account when you're dealing with the IRS. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment below. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thank you.